December 11th, 1984. This is Joe Todd and an interview with Mr. Ernest Cully in Gage, Oklahoma.
Well, here's our early day homestead house right there. This room was built on after we came here. That was built on in two.
Are you in this picture?
I'm on this horse right here.
Okay.
This mare. It's a brother and a brother. Well,
Sir, where were you born?
when was I born?
Yes, sir.
May the 24th, 1891.
Who was your father?
W.S. William Sherman Cully.
And your mother?
Loretta Brent Cully. B-R-A-N-T.
Where were your parents from?
My father was born in Iowa,
Iowa?
Pella, Iowa.
Where was your mother born?
She was born in Illinois.
Where were you born?
I was born in Nebraska.
Nebraska.
Dillon, Nebraska. Gage County.
When did your parents move to Nebraska?
Well, they moved there in the early day.
Did they homestead up there?
My grandfathers did.
What was your grandfather's name?
On my mother and father's side.
Well, both of them.
On my mother's side was Henry Brandt, Civil War veteran.
Did you know him?
I sure did.
Did he ever talk about the Civil War?
Well, I left there when I was 9 years old, and we never talked anything about the war. I know he had buggered up. His feet was in bad shape. He had bunions over his feet, and he had to cut his shoes to wear them.
Was he on the North? Did he fight for the North?
I believe he was.
What about your father's? Your grandfather on your father's side?
I don't know where he was born at. Anyway, my daddy was born in Pella, Iowa. He came to Nebraska, but mother, my granddad on her side, on her side, after the war, he met a half Indian, half Cherokee Indian girl. And I think they had, I could count them, they had about 8 kids. And she died. No doctors at that time, you know. She died of blood poisoning in childbirth.
Was your other grandfather in the Civil War also?
No, he had an accident with his hand, and they wouldn't accept him.
What was his name?
J.S. is all I know.
J.S. Cully?
Yes. He was an officer. Here's my first school picture here.
Is this in Nebraska?
This is Nebraska. That's my first school picture. I'm in there.
Where are you?
I was 8 years old. I've got several cousins there, and I know all the rest of them. The teacher's name was Maud Long.
Maud Long was a teacher?
Yes.
You said you left Nebraska when you were 9 years old?
Yes, sir.
Did you come to Oklahoma?
We come in the wagon parkway. It was in the snow, actually deep to the wagons, and we got as far as Abilene, Kansas. And they played the horses out, and they loaded in the car and come to Woodward. And we reloaded there and My uncles went south to their land and we came here to our land.
Tell me about that trip. The trip in the snow.
We just made one town to the other in a day. Then you know, you went this way and that way and this way and that way. You didn't. There wasn't no angle roads anywhere. It was country roads from one town to the other.
Mm-hmm.
And you traveled farther than you would if it's go like the crow flies, you know.
How come the family came to Oklahoma?
How many?
How come your family came to Oklahoma?
Well, I reckon it's like everybody else. They wasn't making anything where they're at, and he got free land, so he come here and filed on it.
Mm-hmm. How long did it take you to come to Oklahoma from Nebraska?
Oh, I don't know. We made one town to the other in a day, and we loaded on the train at Abilene, Kansas, and come on the train.
Was that in an immigrant car?
What's that?
Did you come in an immigrant car on the train?
Well, Mother and us kids come on the passenger train, and Daddy and my uncles was all in one car.
Mm-hmm. Whenever you came to Woodward, how did you find your claim, your homestead?
Well, we come down the railroad track to Gage, and it's a little before sundown, and he headed south, just out across the prairie, and we happened to see a light up a draw, and we hit well, it was a trail from Pack Saddle Canadian River. They crossed they forded the river there. The river is bad everywhere else, quicksand and everything. It's a mile long, that bridge is down there. There's a cattle trail from there to the headwater out here at Little Wolf. The cattle never had no water, and they left Canadian till they got there, and they come right down the ridge. It was, the road was as wide as from here to the door. It was just bare. They drove cattle down it, and people traveled that road.
What cattle trail was that?
I wouldn't know what the name of it was. We saw a light there, and we hit that road. And my dad thought we was pretty close to where that light was, and he took one mare and rode her over, and Hunt found that light. And they said there was a man and his wife and a bachelor, and he was building a shack on his house, on his quarter out there. I owned it, finally owned it. He was staying with this other man and his wife, and he said, I'm building a shack over there, and you folks drive it. We was close to it, too. He says, just put your bedding in there on the floor and go to bed. And they hobbled one mare and turned the rest of the horses loose, and they grazed. The next morning he got on this mare and went and hunted for him. He was too far west and a mile south and about 2 miles west of where his location was.
How did you find the exact spot for the claim? Were there markers out or what?
It wasn't. There's a rock in the grass. That girl was born just a mile west of where her daddy homesteaded the farm right west of our farm.
Did they mark the corner of the sections with the rocks?
They was all marked with a rock.
Mm-hmm.
Every quarter and every half mile was.
Mm-hmm. How come you hobbled the mare at night?
to keep her from leave her so he'd catch her in the morning.
How come you let the others loose then?
Well, they round them up, and there's easy to catch then. I'll tell you, they roar out.
What kind of house did you first build on the homestead?
That one there I showed you.
This picture?
Yes.
Where'd you get the lumber?
He got her at Gage, I guess. I wasn't with him. But just that one room is what we had. And there's a big fire come shortly after we got here and burnt the whole country off.
Tell me about that prairie fire. What started it?
I don't know what started it, nobody else. The cattleman didn't want the people to homestead this land. There was wild horses that just went in bunches when we come here. There'd be five or six to a dozen in a bunch. And the cattle was free range too, and they finally picked them up. They killed a few, and they picked them up, but the horses, they run for a long time, and they eat our crops bad. And my dad killed a horse. He was a half mile from her when he shot into the bunch, and they just run a little bit and stopped. He shot down there to scare them off, but they just run a little ways and stopped, and finally he shot into the bunch, and he hit a mare and stopped the head and killed her. He's a half mile from her. I've got that gun he had, and my grandson's got it out there.
What kind of a gun was it?
It was a single shot. I forget whether it's a Winchester or not. It's a hexagon barrel. And I see Bill Cody killed buffalo for the Indians for the railroad out at Cody, Wyoming, with the same kind of gun. And I see one up here at Dodge City in a museum up there.
Do you have any memories of the Spanish-American War? 1898-99?
The only thing I know, my granddad was in the battle at Gettysburg. And he met this Indian lady and married her, and on his way home in Illinois someplace. And they immigrated to Missouri to Nebraska down here.
Did you go to school here in Oklahoma?
Well, 1904.
1904? Where was the school?
In our district.
What was the name of it?
Prairie View.
Remember your teacher's name?
Ella Richards. Her son's living down there just about on the same ground that she got $30 a month, and we had 3 months school. I got a friend that's got a picture of that school, but she's not here anymore. She's out in Colorado, no, New Mexico.
Do you remember Statehood Day? 1907.
Yes, they built a fire up there in town and had a big blowout.
Tell me about that celebration.
No, I don't know nothing about it. I never come to town once in a year. I herded cattle. If you see that picture, there's a bunch of cattle. There's 94 head of cattle back at that house. You
Yeah,
can see
yeah,
the,
yeah, I see
you
one
can
there.
see a whitefish bull.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
All them cattle wasn't ours.
Mm-hmm.
With neighbors that come in later, had a cow or two, and no pasture, no fence or anything. They brought them over. I ordered them all.
So what'd you do on statehood day? Just work on the farm?
Well, we just come down and see the rest of the people.
Did they have fireworks?
Oh no, they just built a bonfire.
Bonfire.
There's Mexicans here building a railroad in there. It's a switch anyway. And
Did they have a dance?
what?
Did they have a dance?
No, I don't think so. There's two saloons in this town and a boxcar for depot.
Did the saloons close at statehood?
Is what?
Did the saloons close at statehood?
Well, I believe they did. There was two saloons in town at that time.
What were the names of them?
I wouldn't know. I was sent to town on the horse to get the mail about once a week. We got a weekly paper, and the cowboys come in, and they had a horse that stand. They'd put the reins over the other and saddle, and they stood out in the street till they got their mail, and then I could get my mail and went home.
How many years did you attend school?
As near as I can tell, I put in about 15 months in school.
15 months?
Yes, sir. I didn't know what a high school was. I thought school was a school till I was 20 years old.
What kind of crops did you raise on the farm?
Well, the first thing was broom corn and kaffir corn. Broom corn was a crash crop. We got money for that.
Did you pull broom corn?
I was one of them.
How do you pull broom corn?
Have you ever seen it grow?
Yes, sir.
You take the boot with one hand and the brush to the other hand, and you jerk it. You jerk it out at the first joint. When you get a handful, you either put it on the ground, kick some stalks over that had the brush pulled off of it and lay it on, or else pull one stalk out and put it in between two others. That kept it off the ground.
Was there a factory around here that made brooms?
Oh, there's a jobber. There's a fellow here in town that made brooms. He was, I believe he was blind as he could be. He made brooms just like anybody else made them too, I'll tell you.
Did you let the broom corn ripen before you pulled it, or did you pull it while it was still green?
Well, when the brush got ripe, you didn't wait for the seed to get ripe.
I see.
Where'd you get the broom corn seed?
I don't know where he got it.
Ever plant wheat?
Yes, later we planted maize and topped it by hand, kaffir corn. 1911, the wife and I was married. July the 30th, 1911, and we had a kaffir crop out, I did. And we had 2,100 bushel of kaffir corn that year.
How did you top the kaffir corn? I've heard that expression. I don't know what they mean by it.
You took your right hand, left hand, you used a knife in this hand, you took the heads with your fingers, cut it off and threw it in the wagon.
That was work, wasn't
It wasn't play. And if you didn't get it top before the freeze come and blowed it, the wind blowed it down, you had to pick it up off the ground.
Can you describe what Gage looked like in the early days?
I've got a picture of it in 1907. I can find it. And in 1907, that picture I got of the town, the people that come in here, they had a certain day that they could take their hogs to town, and they put them all on the car and shipped them. There's no buyer. You took your hogs to town, and I guess, yeah, I don't know how they weighed them either. No.
Were there any brick buildings in Gage at that time, 1907?
No, that building was made out of rock.
Rock?
They made cement blocks. It was made out of... There's one building made that way at that time.
When did they pave the streets in Gage?
I wouldn't know what year it was, but it's... Well, that had to be in about around 27.
What were the streets like when it rained before they were paved?
Well, it was pretty sandy here. They didn't get too bad. There was a well and a windmill right in the middle of the street.
What was that for?
Everybody'd water their horses.
What kind of livestock did you raise on the farm?
We raised cattle
Raise any hogs?
and hogs.
What time of year did you butcher your hogs?
Well, we butchered in the wintertime.
How many would you butcher at one time?
1 to 2. We didn't have no cold storage or anything to put them in.
How'd you cure out your hams?
Well, on my dad's farm out there, he built after I married, he built a cement smokehouse and a cement chicken house. He hauled that sand, mixed it, and built them buildings himself, and they're still sitting there. They're all cement. And he put spikes in the wall and hung his hams and shoulders and sides on them and smoked them in that.
How long did it take to smoke a ham?
I don't know how long, but I'd imagine around a week.
What kind of wood did you use?
We just used cogs or anything we could get to.
You didn't pick up cow chips?
Yes, we picked cow chips from the time we got here till, I don't know.
That was fun.
Yeah, you'd put a rope or hitch rein on the tub and drag it and pick up cow chips around over the prairie.
And then unload them in a wagon, or what?
Yes, you'd put them in a wagon, take them to the house. And we went to Sand Hills and plowed the shin oak roots out of the... We could plow it a whole wagon load in a day
Well,
and come back. Nobody homesteaded them Sand Hills at that time. We
did that make good firewood?
You just like oak, you know.
Well,
And
did you have sand plums in the
a lot of
together?
sand plums. There's there by the bushels.
What about persimmons?
Well, they was farther east, south of Woodward on, I forget the name of the creek over there. I had 3 uncles that homesteaded on the upper end of the creek the persimmons was on.
Can you remember when that river was in flood down there?
And the water was what?
The river, Pack-Saddle Crossing there. Can you remember different times when that river would be in flood?
No, I never went to Woodward.
No, I mean this Pack-Saddle Crossing, this river.
Oh, down there.
Uh-huh.
There was times you couldn't cross it.
Mm-hmm. Do you remember hearing about a threshing machine sinking in the quicksand in that river?
No, I never heard that, but the crossing at Tologa, there's a lot of wagon trains went down there. They lost a lot of stock and stuff in the river at Tologa.
Oh, did they lose any lives? Did any of the people?
I don't know. Things didn't travel. No telephones, no
Yes.
nothing at that time. And I had an uncle lived right east of Tologa.
Uh-huh.
He later moved into Tologa.
What was his name?
His name was John Brandt. My mother's brother.
How much lard could you render out of one hog?
It depended on the hog and how fat it was.
How long did it take to render out that lard?
Oh, about an hour, if you didn't crowd it. You could burn your lard and scorch it, and like that, it took a little patience.
Ever help make soap?
Yes, I've helped make soap, and I've cut it out. And
Tell me about making soap.
well, I know you took lye and so many pounds of cracklings and soak them in a kettle and put the lye in there, and it ate the cracklings up. And when it got hard, well, you cut it out in chunks, put it out on the board to dry.
That made good soap too, didn't it? A
Well,
good
it
lye soap.
It took the dirt out of your clothes when you done them this way.
On the
A scrub
board.
board?
Scrub board, yes. They called it a washboard.
What kind of chores did you do on the farm before you were married?
Oh, we just milked cows, and in later years we got a cream separator. Yeah, I know my father got one from Sheridan Roebuck, and the neighbor got one. Before that, at first we put it in crocks and skimmed it off with a skimmer made for that purpose. Later on, we got a water separator. You put as much water in a tank as you did. Well, it was big around, this big around, and it had a glass in the front. You could let the milk off till it come down to where the cream was. Then you took the cream off, and you could churn it and make butter, and we sold it in town.
What kind of churn did you have?
Well, we had different kinds. We had one you turned behind the barrel churn, and we had one you stomper churn.
Mm-hmm. How long does it take to make butter?
Well, there's a whole lot. I don't know. Sometimes it took you quite a while, and sometimes it didn't take so long. I think it was a good deal what the cows had to eat and how long they'd been fresh and things like that.
Mm-hmm. How many cows did you milk?
Oh, 7 to 14.
What would you do with that clabber milk then, when you let the cream rise on
We
it?
fed that clabber milk to the hogs.
Did you ever make cheese? Cottage
Yes,
cheese?
we made a lot of cottage cheese.
That was good eating too, wasn't it?
It was good. You put a little cream back in it and some sugar, and it was...
How do you make cottage cheese?
You put a truck of milk on the back of the stove till it sours and clabbers. Pour it into a sack and hang it up on the clothesline. Let it hang in the corner of the sack, and it'd come out a big chunk of cheese.
What did you do during World War One?
Well, I come pretty near going.
What kept you out of it?
Well, sir, I was married, and and had a wife and a child, and the other one was about ready to be born. And I got a reclassification. I was called in and examined and got Class A1, and later I got a reclassification, Class A2.
But you never had to go.
No, I never had to go.
Did you do any work for the war effort? Like bond drives or
No, I was tied up herding cattle.
too busy farming?
Everything was walking. The sod plow was walking, the stern plow was walking, the cultivator, she walked with the cultivator. Everything was walk.
How did the war... Do you remember the Depression of 1907?
Well, I guess I knew all of them since I've been born. 7 and 30 and
Tell me about 1907 Depression. How did it affect you and the farm?
well, we got along with what we had. We ate rabbit and quail and fried chicken and things like that, and what we raised.
What caused that depression in '07?
I can't tell you.
Did the banks close?
Yes, we had a bank go broke here in town, and one in Arnett.
Or was that in '07?
A little later than that.
Yeah, that was in the 30s, I think.
When they went broke.
Yeah.
It was 430s too.
Oh, it was? Mm-hmm. What about the 1920s?
Well, we just got by. We didn't lay up any money of any kind. We just made a living.
Mm-hmm. What'd you do on Armistice Day? The day the war ended.
I was coming to town on a load of coffee corn, and the whistles began to blow. One at the mill. We had a flour mill over here. The whistles blew, and well, they had a false alarm a week before. That's the year you said 11?
No, 1918, November 11th.
Oh, 18. Well, I was coming to town with a load of coffee corn. I raised quite a bit of coffee corn. Wife and I topped it behind.
Mm-hmm. Was there a big celebration in town on that day when the war ended?
Well, not too many, I don't think. That night they had a kind of a get-together.
Mm-hmm. Were there many Germans in this part of the country?
No, they were all in Shattuck vicinity.
Did you know many of them?
No.
Were there any hard feelings against the Germans during the war?
Not that I knew of.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody was a friend here then.
What about the flu?
I don't care if you'd run out of anything, your neighbor had something he shared with you. Whatever it was, it made no difference.
How about the flu epidemic of 1918?
Well, some of us suffered pretty hard with it.
Did many people die in this area?
Not very many.
What kind of medicines did they use?
The doctor I had gave you 2 bottles. One was number 1, one was number 2.
What was in them?
Medicine. I had typhoid fever when I was 17 years old. And after it's all over with, the doctor says, you'll never be that near dead again and live. And yours.
Mm-hmm.
But she drove out there, the horse and buggy, every day to see me, or went by us seeing other patients. And I didn't know nothing about it.
What was the doctor's name?
Dr. Kerr?
Dr. Kerr. I've met Dr. Kerr.
You met her?
Mm-hmm.
She's quite a lady.
Yes, she was.
Yes, sir, she waited on me.
That was unusual to have a woman doctor, wasn't it?
Well, we wasn't used to a doctor. Us kids was all born without a doctor. Mother never went to see a doctor no time. They like the Indians. They had children and no, just like animals did.
How many brothers and sisters did you have?
I had six. I had 5 brothers, and I was the 6th one. I had 2 sisters.
Are you the youngest, the oldest?
I'm number 3.
Number 3.
My wife was number 3.
How did the Depression of the 1930s affect you?
It's a long time ago, and we just got by with what we had.
Can you describe one of those dust storms?
I wish I had a picture of it. Just a big rolling cloud come in from the north, and first thing you know, it was there.
How'd you keep the dust out of the house?
Shut the doors all.
Did that keep most of it out?
Yeah, I guess that was worse. They complained of the sand getting in the house worse north of us than we did. We never put up any blinds or anything. Always slept in the granaries and one thing and another. Some of them drug chains behind their car if they had one. Oh, sure.
What about World War II?
Well, I don't know what time or what year was that in.
Started in 41. The Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor.
Well, my youngest son had to go. He was in the Army 3 years, Army Air Corps.
Where did he serve? Which, was he in Europe or was he on the...
He never had to go across.
Oh, he did.
They was fitting him to go to Japan. And he trained on different kind of fighter planes. And he was Oklahoma City, and he was Frederick. He was at St. Marcus, Texas. He was at San Antonio, Texas. He come back to Frederick, and he was stationed out at Garden City, Kansas. And he graduated from the fighter plane. At that time, there's a P-38 was the top of it, and they was making what they called a Black Widow. It was more maneuverable. The P-38 was 2 fuselages fastened together. But the Black Widow was a single-bodied plane, and that's the one he wanted. And they laughed at him and they said, "How about a B-24? Says, "You're groomed to go to Japan." Well, luck happens, they kept him over at Liberal, Kansas, a little over a year as a trainee. And he'd come down to this airport, shot come and go, or land and go out over our place, day and night. When you went up, he's up for 8 hours.
In practice, was it? Practicing landing and then taking off?
He knew how, but he was practicing 3 other men.
Oh, I see.
He had three students.
He was training men.
He was training them. Yes.
What was his name? What's his name?
Lloyd.
Lloyd?
Where is he now?
He's Crestwell, Oregon.
Did he go ahead with that career?
But it,
Did he continue in that work after the
he was
war?
ready to go to Japan on the 29. They was making a bigger plane, the 29 that they bombed it with, and they was picking his crew. He had over 1,000 hours on this B-24, and he was teaching these other boys to fly it. But they was going to send him to Japan on the 29 when they dropped that bomb on it. And that saved him from going there.
Yep. What do you think about that bomb?
I never heard him say. And he said if these fellas is riding in these little planes around here and see what it was made out of, they wouldn't want to fly in it.
Should I ask about the tornado?
No, he flew all over the United States. When he graduated, three pilots, they could go anywhere in the United States they wanted to go on a solo flight. Well, he'd take them. He'd been in storms where it hailed till he thought it was going to tear to pieces, but luck happened, he got through.
That's
Yes.
good.
Well, after the war, then he dropped his airplane business, right?
Yes, he'd come back to the farm. Well, he was married and they had two children.
1947.
He was stationed at Liberal there for quite a spell. He saw a lot. When he first got there, the boys undershot the runway. Plane burnt. You could hear her screaming and hollering in there, but
Nothing they could do.
nothing to do.
Well, those are memories he'd like to forget.
No, he was tested. He had an exceptionally good pair of eyes, and I don't know. He was graduated, the third in the class of about 100.
Well, that was good.
He made I guess he was an exceptionally good fellow. They kept him and had him to train these other fellows, or he'd have been gone.
Were you living in Gage when the tornado hit?
No, we was all out in the country there.
Did you feel the effects of the tornado where you lived?
Yes, it took the roof off of my garage and blowed a tree down on it. And the windmill looked like a wooden dumpster, wasn't it? But my son that lives right next to me here, it blowed him away and killed the oldest boy.
Oh.
And I think I probably got pictures of it in here of what it looked like after it.
Well, then it really hit your farm, didn't it?
Well, I was right in the edge of it.
How big was that funnel cloud? Any idea?
Well, it started at White Deer, Texas, and it ended on the road right west of Alva. And they called it Whitehorse. It was an inland town. And that thing was from 2 to 3 miles wide, and it never did rise.
Well, it did damage south of Alva.
What is, son?
It did some damage south of Alva.
Well, it hit from White Deer, Texas, Glacier and out through there. Come out through the west. It took everything there was standing, trees and everything.
Have you been a farmer most of your life?
I was born on the farm.
How long did you farm?
Well, they come to town in '49, but I was running cattle. When my boys got big, married, I helped them get a half section apiece, and my son-in-law too. I helped them what I could. There's never nothing, charges made or nothing. And I come to town, my wife bought this piece of ground. I was looking for a home. Our creek out there, we lived on the Buzzard Creek. And there's two channels come down there, one from the southwest and one from the southeast. And they went together in my pasture. Well, these creeks was up, they couldn't cross nowhere, and they come down there to cross. And the West Creek, if anybody drove in there and changed gears, he was stuck. If the other one was too deep, and he drowned it out, I went and pulled him out. I kept a team harness, the double trees, and the chain in the yard. I never charged with one man, and he was a quarter west and 3/4 south. And there was no unity to him getting out of the road into the bar ditch. But they had got stuck in the creek. There's 3 creeks. 1, 2, and 1 south made 3. And I was the closest one to them, so they come to me to pull them out of the creek.
So you just kept prepared all the time to help people like that?
Yes, so the team was in the barn, ready to go.
Yes. Well, that was nice. That was being a good neighbor.
How many kids did you have?
I've got 3.
3?
1 girl and 2 boys. One was born on the 26th of July, 1913. Boy was born first day of October, 1916. And the last one was born the 17th of March, 21.
Mm-hmm.
Then you and your wife left the farm and bought this house?
We was looking for a house, and everything was built on.
Mm-hmm.
It was built on 2 or 3 times.
Mm-hmm.
And we couldn't find anything that suited us or was for sale. And she's talking to a lady woman right next to here. There's a woman, her sister was there, and her sister owned this piece of ground. She was visiting her, and she met me uptown. She said, I found a place. We can build a house. I let her buy it.
Mm-hmm.
And we started building on this house in March in '49. March, April, May. And we moved here in October.
Mm-hmm. Did you build it yourself?
I done a lot of the work.
Mm-hmm.
I traded the man on some dirt. I had a knoll on a quarter of our land out there. The first night we slept on that land. He was a county commissioner. He had his man to dig this basement. If I let him have dirt enough out there to build up a low place on the highway.
Mm-hmm.
I hauled all these rock, and it's in the basement, and it's up here from Oklahoma City.
Well, you haul them yourself?
I hauled them myself.
What kind of rock are they?
Them are high test rock in the basement, and from the ground up is what they call a pumice rock.
What's a high test rock?
They were cement and gravel.
How much land did you own, Mr. Cully, altogether?
I owned, a wife and I owned 1,020 acres.
Well, when did your wife die?
In '79.
Mm-hmm.
She was 78. Oh, she was 87. On the 20th day of May, and had a stroke on the 29th or 20. Morning the 25th, and she died the 29th.
Well,
You have any more questions?
did you, when you doctored, did you go to Shattuck to doctor? To the hospital over there, Dr. Newman?
My daughter, she had peritonitis
Oh.
when she was 7 years old, and we took her over there, and Dr. Newman operated on her.
Hmm. He was a wonderful doctor, wasn't he?
He was, that's a picture of him right there.
Oh, yes, I remember seeing that picture before. That's an actual picture, too, of him.
Yes, it is.
Uh-huh.
Well, it's picture, painted by memory.
Yes, but then that's the way he traveled.
And what, horse and buggy?
Mm-hmm.
There's two
That's
horses
right.
there. You see
horses.
there's a dugout up there
Yeah.
where he was going. That picture and that one and this one over here is Metcalf's pictures.
Oh, they are.
She painted them from,
Augusta Metcalf. Uh-huh.
she painted them from memory.
Yes. How far did you live from Old Grand?
Well, it's 14 miles from here to Arnett, and it's, I think, 21 or 6 miles down to Grand.
And which direction did you live from Old Grand?
Grand right south of Arnett.
South of Arnett. Uh-huh.
It'd be putting her up straight south of here.
Was your farm in that county where Grand was a county seat?
We was out here 7 miles.
Oh,
My
just
dad-
7 miles out of
My
Gage?
dad filed out here 7 miles.
Oh,
And her daddy's farm was joined ours on the
I
way.
see. Mhm. Then you did your business at Arnett,
Right here.
here in Gage?
Yeah.
I know, but I mean your legal work. You're paid your taxes and
Oh,
things
yeah, that's got to be the county seat.
at Arnett.
Pay taxes.
Can you remember when this was all one county, Woodward County?
Yes, it wasn't divided till, I don't know what year it divided. I think that the railroad come into Woodward in '86. That was the end of the line.
Mm-hmm.
And it come in from the west to Higgins, and that was the end of the line.
Yes.
Well, then they finally built it,
Mm-hmm. Connected it.
connected through here.
Can you remember Old Day County?
Yes, I know where the Day County line was.
Where was it? I don't know. Was it north of Arnett or was it south of Arnett?
Yes, it's about 1 3/4 mile and 3/4 north of Arnett. There was 2 furrows, about 10 feet apart.
And that was the markings between the
That
two
was the
counties?
marking of the Day County and
Mm-hmm. And Woodward County at that time. Well, now Woodward County included Ellis and Harper County, right? At one time.
I forget, I was pretty small, pretty young.
Mm-hmm.
And I was herding cattle all the time. We herded year round for about
Mhm.
3 years.
Well, you have quite a success story. I think if you started out, you and your wife, just young married couple, and ended up with over 1,000 acres of land.
We was married the 30th day of July 1911,
Mm-hmm.
and she was 19 years old and I was 20.
Well.
And we started up on a rented farm.
Mm-hmm.
My uncle owned the farm.
Mm-hmm.
In 1914, we bought a quarter of land out there. I'd worked for the fella, he knew me. I think I paid a couple $100 down on it.
Mm-hmm.
He left. He made out notes, $2,500 to give him for it. Take $2,000 cash or $2,500 on time, 6% interest, $250 a year.
How long did it take you to pay it off?
Well, I paid it off in less than the time that the notes are on.
Well, that's good.
Yes.
Well, you had good crops during that time too, didn't you?
Sometimes yes, and sometimes not so good. In 21, I had 150 acres of wheat out there. It was turning. It was on the 31st day of July. The cloud come up from the west and hailed it into the earth. The girl had peritonitis that year. I bought a Ford car, $600, and I paid $300 down and was going to pay the other $300 after harvest. And that learned me a lesson.
Well, that's the way people did in those days. They would buy on time and pay after harvest. Wasn't that right?
Well, a short time that way. There's no long time
Yes.
loans. They're long loans. It's 10% interest and 10% discount for cash.
How did you manage? You didn't lose your car, did you?
No, they carried me over the next year.
Well,
Well, sir, I done trading in one thing and another. I had a neighbor out there. He was German. He come from, I'm pretty sure Germany, and the fellow right across come from Switzerland. They were both Germans, and they was real good fellows. I'd heard this fellow had loaned some money to neighbors. The girl that had their operation and all had that hailstorm, and it looked like everything happened at once. I didn't go to the bank to see if I could borrow any money, and I asked him if he could loan me $100. He said, yes, I'll loan you $100. He opened up his pocketbook and gave me $100. I said, do you want a note? He says, no. I said, something might happen to me. Well, he says, hardly ever two die in the same family at once. Well, I went over and I seen Dr. Newman as the girl had her second operation. I said, no, I ain't got no money, and I don't like to get it done every month because I ain't got nothing to pay it with. If I raise another crop, I got hailed out. I says, would you discount that, Dr. Bill? I said, I ain't got a thing to say about the operation or anything, but I just wondered if he could discount that a little if I could find the money. He never said a word. He walked over to a little glass cage there and wrote 70 on that. And he showed it to me. He never said a word. I said, you say you'll settle for $70? He says, yes. I said, how quick you got to have the money? Oh, whenever you can get it. I come by and seen this neighbor, asked him to borrow $100. He let me have it. No note, no nothing. And next year I got my wheat cut and threshed and had the wheat in the granary, but I was working my wheat ground. He come down there and he says, I'm going to buy another piece of land. I thought if you had the money, I could use it. But if you're not, I get by. I said, Mr. Raver, I'll get you the money tomorrow. The next morning I run 2 wagons up to the granary and shoveled them full of wheat. I drove one team and led the other to town. That's the way I hauled my grain, just 2 teams. I got the money and brought it back, and I brought it, he wouldn't take no interest. He says, you pay me interest, I never in Christ's world will loan you another cent. I would find another neighbor.
Yeah.
What were those two men's names? That, the German and the one from Switzerland, you said?
Well, the one I had dealings with, his name was John Rabe,
John Rabe.
and the other fellows was Mr. Luty. That's all I know.
Mr. Looney.
Luthi,
Oh,
L-U-T-H-I.
Oh, well, there's some Luthys lives around Gage now. Would they be the same people?
Let's see.
Yeah,
Relative.
relatives.
There's granddaughters here, and well, there's one boy lives out here on the farm. On the farm his daddy traded for.
Yes.
In 1904, they come here in
What's his name?
1904.
Lucy.
What's his first name?
The one that lives out here.
Yes.
Is that Charlie Lucy?
Oh, Charlie and Ted, or Jim.
Charlie and Jim.
Charlie and Jim, there's two.
Jim's
One
the
to-
younger one.
One by his first wife, and the second is from his second wife. I want you to see my wife's picture.
Okay.
Okay.
They surrounded him with 3 companies of soldiers. One from the south, and one from the east, and one from the north.
Uh-huh.
And he finally gave up and he says, I fight no more.
Oh,